the orchard, the dungeon, and the girl who never heard him calling. Chapter 4, The Window That Would Not Answer. Elias woke to stone. For a while, that was all he understood. Stone beneath his shoulder. Stone against his back. Stone breathing cold into his bones. His mouth tasted of old cloth and iron, and his head throbbed in a slow, punishing rhythm. He tried to sit up too quickly, and the room lurched around him. Darkness moved where darkness should not move. Then memory returned in broken pieces. The north footpath. The hush of the hedges. A hand over his mouth. Struggling in wet grass. A horse nearby. No moon. No faces. Then the cell. Lord Edric. Garin Pike. The shaft in the wall. Maribel above him. Elias pushed himself upright. The cell was not fully dark now. A thin grey light came from somewhere high overhead, weak as watered milk. It entered through the narrow ventilation shaft and fell in a pale slant down the opposite wall. Dust turned slowly inside it. He stared at the shaft. For one merciful second, he thought he had dreamed it. Then he saw the crate beneath the wall. His hands were no longer tied. Someone had cut the rope while he slept or while he had been unconscious. His wrists were marked, tender when he moved them. A clay jug sat near the door beside a small piece of bread. There was a bucket in the far corner. The iron door had no handle on the inside. Elias ignored the food and staggered to the crate. It scraped under his boot as he climbed onto it. He gripped the uneven stone on either side of the shaft and lifted himself until his eyes found the angle. At first there was nothing but blur and light. Then the shape above sharpened. Maribel's room. He saw the back of the cream-painted vent grill, the thick clear resin beyond it, faintly yellowed at the edges but clean enough to show the chamber like a scene held under water. The view was narrow, cruelly narrow. He could see part of her bed, the lower half of her wardrobe, the dressing table if she stood near it, a slice of the window curtains. Not the door. Not the whole room. Only enough to know when she was there and enough to suffer when she was not. The bed was unmade. Maribel was not in sight. "Maribel," he said. The word left him hoarse. He swallowed and tried again. "Maribel." Nothing shifted above. He waited, fingers hurting against the stone. A distant sound trembled through the house, footsteps, perhaps, or pipes, or the old manor settling into mourning. Somewhere far away, a door closed. Elias held his breath, listening for her. The cell gave back only his own breathing. He stepped down slowly. Panic did not come all at once. It circled him first, testing the walls. He went to the door and shoved it with both hands. It did not move. He struck it once with his shoulder, then again. Pain burst down his arm. "Open this." His voice filled the cell and died there. "Open it." No answer. He kicked the door until his foot ached, then turned to the walls. Stone, stone, stone. Damp in the seams. Old mortar. Too thick to break with bare hands. He searched the floor, the corners, the pallet, the jug, anything that might become a tool. There was nothing useful. Even the bread had been torn, not cut. He returned to the crate. Above, the room remained empty. He did not know how long he stood there. Time changed in the cell. It no longer moved by bells or sun across fields. It moved by sounds through stone, by the ache in his legs, by light thinning and strengthening through the shaft. He tried to count minutes, lost them, began again, lost them again. Hunger came, but it seemed distant, belonging to another body. Thirst was sharper. At last, he drank. The water tasted flat and cold. He tore a piece of bread with his teeth but could barely swallow it. He kept thinking of Mary's bread at home, dark and dense, cut unevenly because she always claimed knives were too proud of themselves. He saw her hands. Her face when he left the house. The knife she had pushed toward him. "Take this when you go out." He had not taken it. The memory folded him. He sank onto the pallet, one hand over his eyes, and for the first time since childhood wanted his mother with a force that embarrassed him even alone. Not to rescue him. Not because she could break a lord's door or shame stone into opening. He wanted her because she would say his name as if he was still someone the world had not stolen. Above him, a board creaked. Elias shot to his feet. He stumbled onto the crate and looked up. Maribel entered the slice of room he could see. She wore the same cream dress from the morning before, or one very like it, though the bodice was unlaced at the throat as if she had dressed without patience. Her hair was pinned badly. A curl hung near her cheek. She crossed to the bed and sat down, but not like someone resting. She sat as if her legs had stopped cooperating. Elias gripped the stone. "Maribel." Her head remained bowed. "Maribel, I'm here." She did not move. He shouted then. Not as he had before, not with wild disbelief, but with everything he could force out of his chest. "Maribel." Above, she lifted her head. For one dazzling instant, hope struck him so hard he nearly lost his footing. Then her eyes passed over the room, not toward the vent, but toward the window beyond his view. She had heard something else. A carriage outside. A bird. A servant in the hall. Anything but him. Elias pressed his forehead against the cold edge of the shaft. "No," he whispered. "No, look here. Please. Please look here." Maribel stood and walked toward the dressing table. He could see only her side now, one hand resting on the polished wood. She picked up a hairbrush, held it, set it down. She opened a drawer and closed it without taking anything. Then she spoke. "I know you're angry." Elias went still. Her voice came through the shaft faintly, softened by the resin but clear enough to understand. He could hear her. The house had given him that much, and it was a terrible kindness. Maribel looked toward the part of the room he could not see. Perhaps she was speaking to no one. Perhaps to the empty air. Perhaps to him as she imagined him, safely far away and cruel. "I know I said wait," she continued. "I know I said I would come again. But you could have sent word." Elias's hand tightened until the stone cut his palm. "I tried," he said. "I'm trying now. You could have left a note under the chapel stone. You could have told Tomas. You could have told anyone. I didn't leave." Her face shifted. She was not crying. Not yet. Her hurt had not softened enough for that. It made her look almost formal, like a painting of a girl trained to endure her own breaking. "Unless that is the answer," she said quietly. "Unless you did not want the mess of goodbye." Elias struck the wall beneath the shaft. "I didn't leave." Maribel flinched. Again, hope. Again, nothing. She had reacted to the brush falling from the dressing table. It rolled across the floor just within Elias's narrow view and came to rest beneath her chair. Maribel stared down at it. Then she laughed once. It was a thin sound. Unfamiliar. Not the laugh from the bridge or the orchard or the rain-dark chapel. This one had no air in it. "I am talking to an empty room," she said. "You're talking to me," Elias said, voice breaking around the words. "You are. You are." She bent, picked up the brush, and put it back exactly where it had been. Then she went to the bed and lay down facing away from him. For a long time she did not move. Elias stayed on the crate until his legs shook so badly he had to climb down. Even then, he sat beneath the shaft with his back against the wall, as close to her room as stone allowed. Hours passed. A servant came to Maribel's chamber in the afternoon. Elias could not see her face, only the bottom of a dark skirt and a tray placed on the bedside table. The servant's voice was gentle. "My lady, you should eat something." Maribel did not answer. "Lady Serapha says." "I don't care what Lady Serapha says." The servant fell silent. Then, softly, "No, my lady." The door closed. Maribel sat up after a while and looked at the tray. Elias watched her pick apart a piece of bread without eating it. He had not realized hunger could be insulting. A meal sat untouched above him while he counted his one piece of bread below. He did not resent her for it. That was the worst part. He wanted to tell her to eat. Wanted to say, "You'll get a headache, you always do when you don't eat," though he had only learned that in the orchard from one passing complaint. He wanted to be ordinary enough to worry about her in ordinary ways. Instead, he drank another mouthful of flat water and saved the rest. Near evening, footsteps approached Elias's door. He rose so quickly his head swam. The lock turned. Captain Garin Pike entered with a lantern in one hand and a folded blanket over the other arm. Behind him stood Brant, the broad guard, and Ulwen, narrow-eyed and pale in the lantern glow. Garin stepped inside alone. Elias moved toward him. Brant's hand went to the baton at his belt. Garin said, "Don't." The word was not loud, but both guards obeyed. Elias stopped. "Let me speak to Lord Edric," he said. "No." "Then Maribel." "No." "My mother." Garin placed the blanket on the pallet. "No." Elias stared at him. "You have a daughter." Garin's face changed so slightly most people would have missed it. Elias did not. In a cell, a man learned to read crumbs of movement. "You do," Elias said. "I heard Tomas say once. Married in Bellwether." Garin's jaw hardened. "Do not speak of my family." "Would you do this to her?" Brant shifted near the door. Ulwen looked away. Garin's eyes remained on Elias. "My daughter is not my lord's daughter. She's someone's daughter. That argument will not open this door." "No. But it might keep you from sleeping." For a moment, silence held. Then Garin stepped closer, lowering his voice so the guards could not fully hear. "Listen to me, boy. You are alive because Lord Edric wants you alive. Do not spend that carelessly." "Alive?" Elias gave a short, harsh laugh. "Is that what this is?" "Yes." Elias looked toward the shaft. "She thinks I left." "I know. Tell her I didn't." "I won't. Tell her anything. Tell her I was taken. Tell her I fought. Tell her I said her name. Tell her." His voice failed for a second. He forced it steady. "Tell her I didn't leave her." Garin's face remained closed. Elias stepped closer, no longer caring that Brant watched him from the threshold. "I am begging you." The words stripped something from him. He felt it go. Garin looked older in the lantern light. The scar by his jaw pulled white when he tightened his mouth. "Begging is for people who still believe there is a bargain," he said. Then he turned to leave. Elias caught his sleeve. Brant was inside at once. There was a brief struggle, more motion than violence. Garin broke Elias's grip and shoved him back. Brant caught him hard enough to send him against the wall. Pain flashed white at the edge of Elias's sight, then steadied into a dull throb. Garin did not look pleased. "Leave him," he said. Brant stepped back. Elias stayed upright because falling felt like giving them something. At the door, Garin paused. "She is guarded," he said without turning. "Even if sound passed upward, even if she heard you, she would not reach this room." Elias's breath came unevenly. "Why tell me that?" Garin looked back then. "Because hope is useful only when it knows the shape of the walls." Then the door closed, and the lock returned. Elias stood in lantern after dark until the little light that had entered with them faded from the stones. From above came the faint sounds of Maribel's evening. A wardrobe opened. Fabric moved. A servant spoke. Lady Serapha's sharper voice followed, telling Maribel that grief over nothing in particular was unattractive and that Lord Halbrecht's son would visit within the fortnight. Maribel answered so quietly Elias could not hear the words. He climbed onto the crate again. Lady Serapha entered his narrow view, stiff-backed in a grey gown, her hair arranged with such severity it seemed to punish her scalp. She stood near Maribel's dressing table, one hand on the chair. "My dear," Serapha said, in a tone that made affection sound like medicine, "you cannot sulk your way through life." Maribel sat at the bed's edge, her hands folded in her lap. "I am not sulking." "Then what shall we call refusing meals, refusing music, refusing conversation, and staring at the window as if it has insulted you? Practice for marriage, perhaps." Serapha sighed. "Cleverness is a poor shelter. So everyone keeps telling me. Your father is concerned." Maribel looked up. "Is he?" "Deeply." Elias almost laughed aloud. The sound caught in his throat and stayed there, sharp. Serapha continued, "Young women often mistake intensity for truth. Especially when encouraged by unsuitable company." Maribel's face closed. "Do not," she said. "My lady. Do not speak about what you do not know." Serapha's mouth tightened. "I know enough." "No. You know rules. You know which fork to use. You know which families are acceptable and which names make people lower their voices. You know how to sit in a chair as if feeling nothing is good breeding. You do not know him." "Him?" Elias pressed closer to the shaft. Serapha folded her hands. "Then where is he?" Maribel flinched. The room seemed to go airless. Serapha saw that she had struck well and, being human, softened too late. "I do not mean to be cruel," she said. "Yes," Maribel replied. "People rarely mean to be what they are." Serapha stood a moment longer, then turned toward the door. "Rest," she said. "Is that an order too?" "It is advice." "How generous." The door closed. Maribel remained still until Serapha's steps faded. Then she crossed the room so suddenly Elias almost lost sight of her. She went to the small writing desk near the window, only partly visible from below, and pulled out paper. Elias's heart began to hammer. She dipped a pen. He could not see what she wrote. Only her shoulder moving, tense and quick. She stopped after a few lines, stared down, then continued. "Who?" Elias whispered. "Who is it to?" The answer came when she folded the paper and spoke toward the empty room. "Tomas will know." Elias's knees nearly gave. "Yes," he said. "Yes, Tomas." Send it to Tomas. Maribel sealed the note with a drop of wax, but not with the Aster seal. She pressed it closed with the base of a candlestick, leaving only a plain red smear. She crossed to the bell pull. Then stopped. Her hand hovered near the cord. Elias understood the hesitation at the same moment she did. Any servant might take the note to her father. Any maid might mention it to Serapha. Every corridor had eyes now. Maribel lowered her hand. No, Elias said. No, send it. Please send it. She carried the note back to the desk, then changed her mind again and tucked it into the bodice of her dress. Hope returned, thinner than before but alive. She would find a way. Maribel was not meek. She was not a doll set in a window. She would get the note out. Tomas would read it. Tomas would come. Mary would know. Elias held that thought like a coal cupped in both hands. Night fell. No one brought him supper. Perhaps they forgot. Perhaps they meant him to understand. He drank the rest of the water and lay down, though the pallet smelled of old straw and cellar damp. Cold climbed through the blanket Garin had left. Elias pulled it around his shoulders and kept his eyes on the shaft. Above, Maribel's lamp burned late. She sat at the dressing table with the hidden note still against her heart. Sometimes she touched it absently, as if making sure it was there. Sometimes she looked toward the window. Once she looked near the vent, close enough that Elias stopped breathing. But her gaze did not settle. Why would it? To her, the vent was a fixture. Painted iron. A square of nothing. Elias lifted one hand from beneath the blanket. I'm here, he whispered. Maribel leaned forward and lowered her face into her hands. I'm here, he said again. She could not hear him. Near midnight, she stood and crossed to the bed. She loosened her hair with tired fingers, and it fell over her shoulders. Elias looked away then, not from shame exactly, but because watching her in such private sorrow felt like stealing from the person he most wished to protect. He turned his face to the wall and waited until the room above went quiet. Only when her lamp was out did he look again. The darkness above and the darkness below seemed to meet inside the shaft. For a moment, Elias imagined the barrier gone. Not the walls, not the door, not the guards, just that one clear, cruel sheet removed. He imagined climbing through, scraping his shoulders raw in the narrow passage, emerging into her room covered in dust and laughing because fear had ended. He imagined her turning. He imagined her saying his name not as a question, not as accusation, but as recognition. The fantasy was so vivid that when the cold cell returned, it felt like being captured twice. Sleep came in pieces. He woke from each piece reaching for a world that was not there. By morning, his throat hurt from calling in dreams. Light entered the shaft, and with it came Maribel's second day of not knowing. A maid arrived to dress her. Maribel dismissed the girl twice before allowing her to stay. Lady Serapha came with a list of fabrics for Lord Halbrecht's visit. Maribel refused green, refused gold, refused rose, and finally said she would wear black if forced to entertain a suitor while feeling like a prisoner. Serapha answered, black would be improper. Maribel said, so would I. Elias smiled despite everything. It hurt to smile. Later, she found her chance. A young kitchen maid came in with tea. Not the older servant from the day before, but a girl with freckles and nervous hands. Maribel called her by name. Annie. The maid dipped. My lady. Maribel glanced toward the door. Elias leaned so close to the shaft that stone pressed into his cheek. Do you still visit your aunt near Miller's Row? Maribel asked. Yes, my lady. Sundays mostly. There is a boy there named Thomas Reed. Do you know him? Annie looked alarmed. No harm, Maribel said quickly. I only need a note delivered. The maid's eyes went to the door. My lady, I shouldn't. I know. If they ask. They won't. If they do. Maribel removed a small ring from her finger. Not one of the grand Aster jewels, but a slender silver band with a blue stone. Elias had noticed it before in the orchard. She turned it when anxious. She placed it in Annie's palm. For your trouble, Maribel said. Annie stared at the ring. That is too much. Then it is enough to make you careful. The maid swallowed. Maribel took the folded note from where she had hidden it and pressed it into Annie's other hand. To Thomas Reed. Only him. Say it is from no one. Annie closed her fingers around both note and ring. Yes, my lady. Elias shut his eyes. Thank you, he thought, not knowing whether he meant Maribel, Annie, or whatever mercy remained loose in the house. The maid left. Maribel stood very still after the door closed. Then she sat, suddenly pale, as if the small act had cost her more courage than any open rebellion. Elias climbed down from the crate slowly. For the first time since waking in the cell, he ate the bread. It was hard, sour, and beautiful. The day dragged, but differently now. Hope made time heavier, not lighter. Every sound beyond the door became Thomas arriving. Every footstep in the corridor became discovery. Elias paced until he knew every uneven stone by the shape of it beneath his boot. No one came. Above, Maribel waited too. She pretended not to. She tried reading. She sat at the pianoforte and played 3 measures badly, then stopped. She opened her wardrobe and closed it. She stood at the window. She sat again. She spoke little when Serapha entered and less when Lord Edric came near evening. Elias heard his voice before he saw him. My dear. Maribel was by the dressing table. She turned with a stillness that made Elias's hands curl. Father. Edric entered the visible part of the room only partly, one shoulder, one hand, the dark line of his coat. Elias saw enough to hate him. You look tired, Edric said. I have been sleeping poorly. So I am told. How comforting, to be reported on. A household notices distress. A household obeys you. As it should. Maribel turned away. Have you come to discuss Lord Halbrecht's son? I have come to discuss you. That must be a welcome change. Edric paused. Elias could imagine his expression perfectly, the cold patience, the measured disappointment. You are angry with me, Edric said. Yes. Good. Maribel looked at him then. Edric continued, anger has more dignity than pining. Elias felt the word like a hand around his throat. Maribel's face paled. Do not call it that. What shall I call it? Mine. That answer moved through Elias with such force that he had to sit down on the crate. Edric said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, you think he is yours. I think my heart is. Ah. The small sound was almost tender. That made it worse. Maribel's voice tightened. What do you know? I know Lowmere is a small town. I know boys with empty pockets often find ambition in softer forms. I know that if a young man truly wished to stay, he would not vanish before dawn with a carter. He did not vanish. No. No. Then where is he? The question landed exactly where Edric meant it to. Maribel had no answer. Elias stood again. Here. I'm here. Maribel said, something happened. Perhaps. You know something. I know that you are wounded and searching for a nobler blade. She stared at him. You think I imagined him better than he was. I think you imagined him. No. Maribel. No. Above, she turned away from her father and toward the vent, not seeing it, not seeing Elias, yet facing him so directly that he could almost pretend. He was real, she said. Elias placed his palm against the stone beneath her. I am. Edric's voice lowered. Then let reality answer. Has he written? Maribel's mouth tightened. Has he sent word? Silence. Has anyone seen him? Still nothing. Has he risked even one foolish gesture to prove this grand devotion? Elias slammed both hands against the wall. I'm here. Maribel's eyes shone, fixed somewhere beyond the vent, beyond Elias, beyond help. Edric said, I am sorry. No, you aren't. The words came out calm. Edric did not deny it. He stepped closer to her, though only his shadow crossed Elias's view. My daughter, he said, you must learn the difference between losing a person and discovering one. Maribel's hand moved to her breast, where the note had been hidden that morning. It was gone now, sent away, entrusted to Annie's trembling hands. The gesture was small, but Edric noticed. Elias noticed him notice. The room changed. Edric's voice remained even. Are you unwell? Maribel lowered her hand too late. No. What is it? Nothing. Maribel. Nothing, father. Elias felt cold spread through him. Edric turned toward the door. Send Annie to me, he said to someone outside. Maribel moved at once. Why? There was her mistake. Too quick. Too afraid. Edric looked back. Because I require tea, he said. Maribel's face showed she did not believe him. Neither did Elias. The door closed behind him. Maribel stood frozen for 3 breaths. Then she crossed the room, paced once, twice, then gripped the back of her chair. She whispered something Elias could not hear. He heard himself answer anyway. Run. But she could not run. The house had more corridors than courage had exits. Half an hour later, the cell door opened. This time Edric entered with Garin. Elias stood beneath the shaft, already knowing. Edric held a folded note between 2 fingers. The wax had been broken. The room seemed to tilt. No, Elias said. Edric did not look angry. That was what made him unbearable. He looked almost bored, as if correcting an error in accounts. Annie is sentimental, he said. Sentiment makes poor servants poorer. What did you do to her? Dismissed her. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Another life bent because of him. Another person punished for carrying the smallest piece of truth. Edric unfolded the note. Shall I read it? No. He read it anyway. Tomas. Elias would not leave without word. Something is wrong. Ask Mary. Ask at the East Road. Do not trust anyone from the hall. Burn this after reading. Elias stared at the floor. It was such a Maribel note. Quick. Direct. Brave enough to accuse danger, not careful enough to survive it. Edric refolded it. She nearly saved you, he said. Elias looked up. That is a cruel thing to say. Yes. The answer came without effort. Edric walked to the crate and glanced up the shaft. Maribel was not visible, though her lamp was lit. She will be watched more closely now. Elias moved before thinking. Garin caught him by the chest and forced him back. There was no need for more. Elias's strength, fed by little food and less sleep, had already begun to betray him. Edric slipped the note into his coat. "You should understand something," he said. "Every attempt to reach her will become proof that she needs stricter care. Every servant she persuades will be removed. Every friend she uses will be questioned. Every path she finds will close." Elias breathed hard through his nose. "So be careful," Edric continued. "Not for yourself. I assume you are beyond that. Be careful for her." There it was. Not a chain around his wrists. A chain around every person he loved. Elias looked toward the shaft. Above, Maribel crossed into view. She had been crying now. He could tell by the way she moved, by the exhausted set of her shoulders. She went to the writing desk, found the drawer empty, and understood. Her hand rose to her mouth. Elias watched her lose hope in real time. Edric watched Elias watch. Then Lord Edric Aster turned and left the cell without another word. Garin followed. The lock clicked. Maribel sank to the floor beside her bed above, only partly visible from Elias's angle. Her dress pooled around her. She pressed both hands against her face, and though Elias could hear no sob clearly through the sealed vent, he saw the tremor of her shoulders. He climbed onto the crate. "Maribel," he said. His voice was no longer a shout. Shouting had become foolish. The wall did not care how much air a body spent against it. "I didn't leave." She could not hear. "I would never have left." She could not hear. "I'm sorry." That, at least, was safe to say. It did not require an answer. He stayed there until his legs gave out and he had to sit beneath her, back against the wall, head tilted toward the shaft. Above him, Maribel eventually rose from the floor and put out the lamp. The darkness returned, layered and complete. Elias reached into his shirt for the scrap of her earlier note, the one he had carried since the orchard. "Not tonight. Serapha watches me. My father has asked too many questions. I am trying. Do not think I have forgotten." He unfolded it by touch. The paper had softened from being carried against his skin. He could not see the words in the dark, but he knew where each line sat. He pressed it between his hands like prayer. Hours later, when the house had gone quiet, water dripped somewhere behind the wall in a slow, patient rhythm. Elias counted the drops. He made himself a promise before morning. He would not make it easy for Edric. He would not become only absence. He would learn the sounds of the house. He would learn when Garin came, when guards changed, when servants passed near enough to hear something through the lower stones. He would save strength where he could. He would search every inch of the cell until the mortar gave up a secret. And if all he could do was speak to Maribel where she could not hear him, then he would speak. He would tell the truth into the wall until the wall knew it, even if no one else ever did. When dawn finally paled the shaft, Elias rose unsteadily and climbed once more onto the crate. Maribel's room was grey and still. She slept curled on top of the coverlet, one hand near her face, the other closed around nothing. Elias rested his forehead against the stone. "Good morning," he whispered. Above him, separated by a few feet and an entire world, Maribel did not wake.